Come on, bitch, let's go. Come on, get ready, bitches. You haven't seen nothing yet. Come on.
Valentino, Versace, Lamborghini, Bugatti. I got money to burn. I'm single and I'm naughty.
Come on.
Tiffany's, Cartier, Gucci, Armani.
Come on.
Break out your black card, boys. It's time to party.
Okay, so I'm going to go really fast in this intro today. Jacqueline Laurita's back on This Is the Tea episode, the one you've been waiting for, part 2. There is a part 3. I don't want to ruin the surprise of what's in part 3, but if you go to the end of this episode, you can hear what's in part 3 and you're going to love it, okay? Just trust me. It's going to shock you. Okay, so what I wanted to get you excited about is in the process of doing the show with Jacqueline Laurita, I learned a whole bunch of things about what was going on in Real Housewives of New Jersey from like 1 through 7 season. And I got such an understanding of why we've all been so confused throughout the years about the different relationships. And it turns out that all of the teams that you thought you guys were on, like the entire show, don't really exist, which was like mind-blowing to me. Okay, because I was like you, I fell into this kind of trap. So here's what I found out, and I'm just going to give you a quick cliff note because it's going to unravel for you as you listen to all the tea in this episode, which it's chock full. But what happened in the origin story of Teresa Giudice and Melissa Gorga really was that Teresa and her family got upset that Joe Gorga was leaving his fiance, who the family loved at the time, to be with Melissa Gorga, who they felt was a putan. I hope I'm saying that right, okay? And so that was the take of the family on Melissa, mainly because I guess Joe Gorga had told a little bit of her, difficult youth where she was a dancer and all these things, right? So this was carried over to the family and they're like, I don't understand why you would leave your current fiance for her. And they thought that Melissa wasn't into Joe for the right reasons. Obviously, that didn't turn out to be the case, but at the time. Anyway, because Melissa Gorga was not feeling like she could fit into the Giudice family, she essentially feels alienated. So she tries out for the show as part of this. She wants to be famous. And what ends up happening is she goes on her casting tape and is like, I will come for Teresa Giudice. Well, why? Because Teresa Giudice and her don't ever have a real relationship. They hate each other always. From the very beginning, from the moment she started dating Joe Gorga, all the way up to the point where she starts casting for New Jersey. Now, here's something I didn't know, which you're going to hear the whole story about in this, but I want to give you a highlight. So the story starts out that Teresa Giudice and Joe Gorga are the closest of close as they're growing up. They're inseparable as siblings, and the family is very tight. Joe Gorga is engaged to another girl that the family loves, and they're really excited for her to join the family. And then all of a sudden, Melissa Gorga enters the frame, and the family does not like her because Joe Gorga is already with another woman who he's engaged to that they like, and who's really integrated into the family. So this is the beginning of the rift. And Joe Gorga is madly in love with Melissa Gorga, so he chooses Melissa essentially over the family, and they don't ever accept Melissa in. And then the show happens. Before Melissa Gorga goes on the show, she spills tea to Danielle for Danielle to use against Teresa. This is Danielle Staub I'm talking about. And then she goes and starts casting with Danielle's help and also spilling tea to the producers that she will come for Teresa because they don't get along because of the true reason they don't get along, which is their family never accepted Melissa. And also Melissa, therefore, takes Joe away from the family. It creates like this whole drama. But their families are divided from the get-go. And then she comes on the show and Teresa Giudice pretends to be nice to them because it's on camera. And she's trying to like not fight with them on camera. But then Joe Gorga and Melissa come out fighting because they promised the producers to do that on the show. So they start attacking Teresa and calling out the way the relationship really is, which then forces Teresa to fight back with the, in her best way possible. And this starts everything off. Behind the scenes, they're never really tight, ever. And this gets really confusing for the cast members shooting with them because they're trying to navigate what's happening on the show, which is completely bullshit, to what's happening behind the scenes, which is a long-standing feud between Teresa and her brother over Melissa, and the fact that they never approved of Melissa for Joe, and for good reason at that time. Right? Because she hadn't proven herself that she was going to stay with Joe through thick and thin and all these wonderful things, have kids with them and stuff like that. So now this should give you so much insight into so many things. And I cannot wait for you to hear all this unravel for yourself in today's episode. Get ready, because this is not what you expect. I got news for you. We have all, and I mean all, no matter what side you've been on, drinking from the Kool-Aid. Wait till you hear today's show.
Come on, bitch, let's go.
Well, now that we got that all off our chest, Jacqueline, it's really the time I've been most excited to do with you, okay? I'm gonna just let you guys in on something. I had talked to Jacqueline a lot about trying to understand her relationship with Melissa Gorga, because as I mentioned at the beginning of the part 1 of the episode, Melissa Gorga had just met Jacqueline Laurita when she joined the show. Jacqueline really didn't have that much interaction with Melissa because Teresa didn't talk about her that much. Well, more on that later. Okay. So I was really curious because the fans were very kind of confused by the dynamic of Jacqueline Laurita and Melissa Gorga. And I have some insight, being that I was on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And so I know there's like a lot of behind the scenes dynamics that play out on camera that unless you've been through it, you don't really understand it or get it. And for me, one of those types of scenarios was Jacqueline Laurita and her relationship with Melissa. So I asked Jacqueline as a segment, like the old days, like we had to do on all the shows, they made us blog. Right after a show happened, so we could explain in a more organized way our thoughts. I asked Jacqueline to do a blog about the chronology of what went down with Melissa Gorga. And it was so good. I kind of did it to see if it would be good. And it was so good that this is now going to be a segment on today's show. So Jacqueline, please start off today's part 2 with all the juicy gossip with this information of your blog to do with Melissa Gorga. And you can introduce it any way you want.
Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah, I had to pull up all my thoughts of Melissa Gorga going back to the beginning, and I just started writing, and then it just started like I was regurgitating everything and it was all coming out. So I'll just kind of read. I have this writing style where I write as I speak. So sometimes, it's not perfect, but it's just the way it's coming out of me as I'm writing. It's kind of like a therapy thing I do.
I thought it was like a professional novel when you sent it to me. Seriously, I was like, is she a professional writer? Like, what's happening here? But, it was so organized. Actually, sometimes I just want to hear the story. And the fans know in the Patreon, I hate hubbub where I can't get to what I'm trying to understand. People forget or they say it wrong or it takes an hour. And I just am too, like, I have lack of focus. So I struggle. So I really appreciated this because I was like, great, we're going to get this story in the most, beautiful way, concisely out, and then it'll roll into all the other juicy gossip and it makes a lot of sense for people, without us having to jump around.
So I wrote to the end of this season, but I didn't finish with the finale and the reunion. So that's just going to come out of my mouth, however it comes out. But
okay.
I have up until then. Okay.
Okay. Because this is going to play into so much of the stuff we're going to talk about. So.
Okay. Before Melissa ever filmed, I never heard anything about her. So when she showed up to film events like Teresa's housewarming party and Melania's christening, Teresa had asked me not to talk to her because she didn't care much for her. And she said all Melissa wanted to do is get her face on camera. So I didn't talk to her. I really didn't, interact with Melissa at the time. But producers heard her say this while we were mic'd. So they must have been interested in who she was talking about. And then they found Melissa on Facebook and saw they were fighting about sprinkle cookies on there and stuff like that and took interest in her. But, prior to that, I'm kind of going to talk in between what I wrote.
Yeah.
But prior to that, I never really knew much about Melissa. She never really talked to her. Now, remember, Teresa and I were like great friends, best friends for like 7 years prior to the show. So I never really heard much of Melissa until she was joining the show. So meanwhile, while we were filming our first and second season, Melissa was corresponding with Danielle Staub and filling her in on private things about Teresa. So Danielle wanted Melissa to come on and film with her saying these things, but she didn't, because Melissa later had told me that the reason she didn't come on to film with Danielle was because she was pregnant at the time and she didn't want her first debut to be her pregnant.
Do you know who I am?
No, I can't say that I do.
I don't know how to put this, but I'm kind of a big deal.
And then also going after Teresa.
Oh boy.
So, but it was made clear to Teresa that Melissa was talking to Danielle at the season 2 reunion when Danielle asked Teresa, "Did you go to the hospital to see your nephew?" Like for her nephew being born. So that was insider information that only Melissa would know. So Teresa did go to the hospital that day. I forget why she couldn't make it the day of, but that's why Teresa lost her shit. And that's when she threw Andy Cohen out of the way at the reunion, because it became apparent that all the gossip Danielle was sharing about her during filming was being fed to her through Melissa. Danielle was like, "Oh, your bankruptcy," and like all this private things that Danielle was throwing against Teresa. She was getting all that information from Melissa.
Whoa. Okay. The betrayal. All right. Keep going.
So fast forward. So then Teresa finds out that Melissa is now casted for the show, and she's extremely pissed. She's disgusted that they would come on a show that she's 2 seasons into, knowing that they have issues. So Teresa knew they were coming on to cause problems for her and not just for the opportunity, as Melissa stated. And Teresa knew that this would affect the family dynamic even worse than it already was. And she didn't want to expose her family drama on TV. She had seen, what it did to our family, and she didn't want that happening to her.
What did it do to your family?
It caused a lot of strain on our family because there was like feuding with the Danielle, Danielle Staub, me being friends with Danielle, finale. Our family kind of got torn apart from the show because like Dina thought I didn't say enough nice things about her on the show while filming, which I did. They just edited out that part because they were filming like a narrative that they were trying to follow. So they didn't show the good things I said. And behind the scenes, Dina was pulling away because she was mad that I was filming with Danielle and I didn't have a choice because they weren't filming with Danielle and production put me with her. So I had just met Danielle. I just started filming with her. I had to film with her and they didn't like her. And it was like this whole thing and the book and whatever. And then, what happened at the finale when, Dina said that her hands didn't touch the book and I called her out on that and she didn't like that. And then her and Caroline started fighting over things and it just basically destroyed our family. Everybody was fighting internally.
Like you guys actually, the show corrupted your real family.
Yeah. It really did. Events that are forced on the show cause problems.
I actually said at the beginning of the show that it's time that people really understand the producer interaction on this show because it's so predominant and I don't think the fans know that very much.
And I don't think they realize like how filming go with, our first season on the show, when it airs, we filmed for 6 weeks. They showed, what they wanted to show of the show. It was only 6 episodes. So not everything was aired that was said and a lot was happening. I'm hoping, now that further down the line that people have been on for seasons that maybe Dina understands now how filming works and, things that were being edited out, like the whole finale. That's a whole nother story, but the way it ended, like I maybe have been saying something about Danielle that they aired it to be about Dina and
so they actually used your words out of context for one person.
Yeah, they used it out of context. Like they made it look like the book was first exposed at Chateau and Dina was the one bringing it to Chateau to show everybody, where that's not where the book first came out. I wasn't answering to Chateau. I was answering to when Dina first introduced us to the book and when she showed Teresa, and like when I voted against showing Teresa because I knew she'd be upset, and there was a lot more involved in it. And so when she had said her hands never touched the book, like I was talking about, you were involved with this book just like we all were like freaking out about it. But you're trying to say your hands never touched the book, which isn't true. That's a lie. I had heard Caroline and Dina were in the salon with the book and they were showing the people that work there. That's what I was told from the girl that, people that work in the salon.
Yeah.
And so that it came out in a way that the first showing of the book was in the salon, which I don't even know why Danielle was getting upset about it, because she's the one that gave the okay to air about the book in the first place.
Of course. So the bottom line here is the book was completely produced. Like Carlos King produced that scene totally. Later, Danielle doesn't mind the book coming out. Cop without a badge or whatever it is.
The one who told them to talk about it, because when she found out that we all knew about the book, she wanted to address it on camera. All of us were trying to keep it off camera. We were just with production going, who is this person that you hired for the show? Are we in danger? Like, what is this about? What's
confusing from a viewer's perspective is that the book is very negative to Danielle. It is the most horrific book. Like Danielle has got a gun in someone's mouth and pistol whipping them and kidnapping and is like a drug dealer. And it's
obviously there has to be something else. It's just not name changed and arrested. There has to be something else. Oh, you were stripping? You were stripping? Arrested. Prostitution whore? You were f***ing engaged 19 times? You stupid bitch! Coming to my trap! To my trap! You again!
Wow. Teresa acted like a freaking caged animal at the zoo. I mean, tables need to be thrown at me because I had a book written about me.
Yeah, prostitution court. Exactly. Danielle doesn't probably want the book to come out, but when she finds out the cast knows about the book, Danielle sees it as an opportunity to like dismantle it, because now she knows it's out of her control and the producers have it and they're going to use it in some way. So Danielle's like, I'm going to spin this to my benefit. And so then Danielle starts to get on board with production to make it this like dramatic storyline in the show to like help Andy and everybody. And
it's not like Dina was investigating Danielle. People in town knew about the book prior. So when they found out Danielle was on the show, everyone started talking and they told Dina, hey, did you know she's got a book about her out there or whatever? And then I don't know if she searched the book or someone gave her I don't remember what happened there, but Dina had the information about the book and told us about it. And then once we knew about the book, then we're like, who is this person? Then we started searching her out. Like, who is she? What's the history here? This is crazy. And then second season is when her ex, who the book was written about, he sent a letter and all this, her court records and all this stuff to the Brownstone to warn the cast about her, because he had seen it on TV and was like, you got to be careful of this girl. Here's her court records. He sent a lie detector test that he took, a really intense lie detector, the results from that, so we knew he wasn't lying. And that's why, like, you hear me on season 2 when I'm chasing after her with Teresa and I'm like, I read your court records, Danielle. It's because they sent it to the Brownstone and I read them. Dina didn't like her, but it's not like anyone had to like go.
They weren't vindictive about it. It was
It was like brought to us, you know what I mean? And, Dina heard about it. She shared it with us. And so I thought Dina was trying to say her hands never touched the book. And that's where I heard about it for the first time. So that's why I called her a liar, because I was like, wait a second, like, you brought the book to your house to show Teresa and some other people that were there. Like, come on, like, I came clean and was like, told Danielle, yeah, when I found out about the book, I started Googling you, like, who the hell are you? Like, what have you done? Yeah. So, I felt like everybody was owning their part, but her. So that's why I was mad in the moment. But the way it was edited was like, I was talking about the day at Chateau, but I wasn't there the day at Chateau. So I don't know. what happened there. But
yeah, Dina has a reputation with some of the cast members of being like trying to put on this image of like being angelic, and she isn't always. Do you know what I'm saying?
I'm not going
Like
to talk
she's very
about
image oriented.
but she's very sensitive, and I think she didn't want the drama on her, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, Caroline took the heat for the salon, whatever. But like I remember talking about Danielle, like we all know what Danielle is. And
Hey, I have a question and then we'll go back to your blog because we went off topic. I want to know, how is Caroline Manzo doing? Have you heard anything? I know she's been touring with her book. Have you heard how she's doing post Brandy Glanville harassment?
no, not since like right after it happened. And she seemed very distraught about it. It was literally right after it happened. Because I had heard like, how rumors circulate, you don't know what really happened at the time. And I had heard some things like she hit her or something. So I didn't know what happened at the time. So I called her, "Are you okay? Oh my God." And she couldn't talk about it much at the time, but she seemed very distraught about it and just didn't really want to talk about it, but she seemed very upset. And
wow.
I didn't push it because I could tell it was like a sensitive issue. So I kind of just let it go. And we really haven't talked about it since.
Okay. Well, anyway, tell her we hope she's all right. Brandy's a lot. What can I tell you? I filmed with her, so I know. All right. So continue on your blog story about we're back to Melissa Gorga. Go ahead.
Okay. So now, we find out she's been feeding information to Danielle. Okay. So fast forward, Teresa finds out she's casted for the show. She's pissed, disgusted. She's coming on a show. She's 2 seasons in already. She was like, she's coming, to cause problems. She didn't want the drama. She didn't want to expose her family drama on TV. So before all that, Teresa never talked to me about Melissa. But now she was coming on the show. She shared with me that, her family really didn't care for Melissa. They had really liked Joe Gorga's fiance at the time that Melissa took away from him. He actually left his fiance for Melissa. They didn't like that because they really liked the other girl. They didn't know much of Melissa, but they knew she didn't really like at the time they were looking at her fake boobies. And I guess Joe had told Teresa at one point that Melissa had a pass as a stripper. So they thought of her as like a putana just after Joe's money. Like that was the vibe that I got from it. It was like, this girl just is after his money.
Yeah.
Because she saw his house and whatever. And, so they didn't get off to a great start. So there was also rumors at the time that were circulating of Melissa cheating on Joe with her ex named Bulldog. So Teresa was like, Melissa should be worried that her past is going to come out while filming, and that's not going to be good, and I think at the time, because the way Melissa came on, Teresa was really hoping she would get exposed. But
I think you're right. I mean, let's face it. I think that she didn't like Melissa. Melissa comes on the show in a really shady way. And so now, if Melissa gets called out as a stripper, it's not a bad thing for Teresa. Let's just say
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember joking before, I met Melissa and everything. I was like, "Oh, I'll wear that jacket from Posh that has a bulldog on the back while filming." Like we were like, we had made jokes about it. But I mean, it never happened. But it was just like,
well, you're not the only person I have heard say that Joe Gorga may have been cheated on in the beginning, and Teresa thought that. I heard that from other people too.
There was someone going around saying that they saw a private video of Melissa blowing her ex outside the sushi lounge, allegedly. In her white Range Rover that she had at the time when she was married to Joe. But I mean, I never brought it up on camera.
Well, how many years was that after they got married?
I don't know. I don't remember.
Oh my God, you guys, how crazy is that given the gossip? Because the gossip that came out recently that Margaret saw with the publicist or whatever, Melissa making out with a guy that she collabs with a lot, she goes to events with a lot because they're represented by the same person or something. She was with him in a car.
I heard that rumor like a long time ago when they were doing a season, and it's when like Danielle was on the show as a friend and they had like a slumber party at a hotel, and someone had DM'd me and said that Danielle had told them that after that slumber party that night that she had met up with that guy Nick or whoever it was and had some kind of affair with him made out with him or something. But I didn't, at the time, I honestly didn't believe that because it came from Danielle, and I don't believe a lot of things that she says. I feel like she makes things up.
But so do you think that Margaret took that original story and then made it a different story to leak to everybody?
Well, no, because this supposedly came at a different time, a different event where she was in the car with him after something. It was at a
Yeah, but
different
that's what I'm saying.
time.
That's the same story as what Margaret told.
I don't know, because I wasn't around for any of that, but I didn't believe it. I mean,
So Danielle tells you a story of Margaret.
no, she doesn't tell me. We
No.
weren't speaking at the time. I
Okay.
guess she told a fan that had messaged me and told me Danielle's saying, I don't know if she heard Danielle saying it in one of her like Instagram lives, or I don't know where she heard it.
The Nick guy was the guy that she allegedly kissed that Margaret says last season.
Yeah, so I don't know, because that was a few seasons ago. So I don't know if it was the same guy on two different occasions that this
It
rumor.
is, or it's the same guy on one occasion and they used it twice.
Yeah, I don't know, because I wasn't around for any of that. Like
Ooh,
I
that's juicy.
had a hard time believing it because I know how Danielle tells stories. So Teresa tried to take a stand when she heard Melissa was coming on the show and said that she would not sign her contract if they brought Melissa on because she was so upset about it. But it took like me, Kim D, Carlos King, who's a producer, to talk to her into staying on the show and to sign the contract. So we were saying this has been your show for 2 seasons. You're going to go to the christening tomorrow, and you're going to let Melissa walk around with the cameras, and you're just going to be on the outside watching this whole thing. Like, you're going to let her take your show, because they're not going to not hire Melissa because you're quitting. Like, they're still going to film with her. So you might as well sign on. Like, why walk away? But my whole strategy was to, I had told Teresa, call your brother before filming and try to resolve your issues, before filming. So that way you're not fighting with your family on camera. But she was way too angry at that point, and she totally refused to talk to him. Like, she wanted nothing to do. She's like, no way. Like, she was too angry. She didn't want to talk to him, whatever, before. But that was my advice to her, was call your brother, try to resolve things. If it's for the opportunity, you both have the opportunity and you won't fight on camera. Just try to resolve it. But she was way, 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 way too angry at the time. But so I had also reached out to Melissa and Kathy to find out their intentions on coming on the show. So, and they assured me they weren't looking to hurt Teresa and they just wanted the opportunity. So, I'm trying to calm Teresa down about it. Like, no, they just want on the show. Don't worry. Like,
Why was she worried about them coming on the show?
Because they weren't in a good place. And so for her to come on the show, it's just going to bring out all their family drama. And she didn't want to fight with her family on camera. She knew it would hurt her parents. She knew it was like not going to be a good thing. Cause like, she always knew like Melissa just wanted to be famous, and she wanted to, it's kind of like this was Teresa's thing and now Melissa's coming in on it.
So how did she feel about Kathy coming on the show with Keely?
Kathy really just wanted the opportunity. She didn't have any ill intentions towards Teresa. She really didn't. She never really showed that. I mean, I think she just reacted to some things in the moment that were being said, but she, I think, really thought about whether she was going to come on. She was going to tell Teresa she was coming on, but someone got to her before she could tell her, and she hadn't really even made like a final decision yet.
Wow.
Before she could tell her. But I don't think her intention was, oh, let me just go after Teresa. But that was, when you hear about the audition tapes that are out there with Melissa, they were coming at Teresa. So
I said to you in our private conversation that I believe that the only reason they brought Melissa Gorga on the show was that she agreed to fight with Teresa, and that she agreed to attack Teresa. And Joe had to have known that.
Well, yeah. Well, not only their audition tape, but they had to have seen them fighting on Facebook over the sprinkle cookies. They had to have heard Teresa on the microphone saying, don't talk to her on camera. All these things. And then the other
also Melissa said derogatory things about Teresa to the producers, because she was saying right out of the gate, I'm the young hot housewife. That's like a diss to your sister-in-law.
And she had been talking to Danielle all season prior, giving her all private information about Teresa.
Correct. So Melissa started out being like a person spilling tea to, somebody, a housewife.
Right. Plus, I mean, Teresa went into filming, without talking to them prior for the first time, but she tried to act like on camera, like everything was fine. So you see her at their christening, she comes up, puts her arms around them, like everything's cool, and then Joe called her out on camera. What do oh, why don't you ignore us like you always do? And like, made like a scene, and then this whole christening fight starts and it explodes, and then the war is like out there now for everyone to see. But prior to that, I mean, Teresa did have them on the show. She had them at her christening, she had them at her housewarming party. It's just that she didn't really want them in the forefront. Like, she brought her brother up to introduce him during one of those episodes, but she didn't really, she knew Melissa was all about fame and money and blah blah blah, and she just didn't want to give it to her, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's why, she was so upset. But when they came on the show, as mad as she was, she tried to act like everything was fine. But then they called her out on camera. They weren't trying to hide it, So, all right. So that's, that explosion happened. And so this was also a time for me that I started noticing my son was regressing in his developmental milestones. And that was weighing heavily on my mind in the middle of all this. So I really didn't want to be involved in all the extra drama at the time. I didn't even want the producers to know my concerns were at that time, because I wasn't willing to share it on camera until I knew exactly what was going on with Nicholas, So I was kind of hiding that from production that season and watching my son's decline. And that's where off camera, where my mind was most of the time. But then, I'm on the show and I'm having to deal with all this craziness around me. So I didn't want to be feuding with people on the show, or my friend's family. And I wanted them to make up, because if I was fighting with them and then they made up, then I'm the asshole, right? Then I'm on the outs. And it would be also uncomfortable for me to go to their family events or even film or whatever. So my goal was to get them both to talk out their issues with each other and get to a good place so we could all film together and have fun. And also, so, my friend Teresa wouldn't have to feel so stressed out about filming. So like, that was my goal. Like, let me see if I can get to the core of their issues and sort it out, so then we can proceed with filming. So looking back in retrospect, I think Teresa really just wanted my loyalty and to not be friendly with people that were trying to hurt her and have her back and call those people out, which I can now see that from, her perspective. But at the time, I just wanted peace, and I didn't want to invite more drama in my life with my castmates, who were my friend's family, especially with what I was privately dealing with my son. And also, I was also dealing with a lot with my daughter at the time. So Teresa felt that I was more welcoming to Kathy and Melissa coming on the show than she had expected me to be. And I get that now, because she really just wanted me to call them out for the things that, I knew about them, and to go after them. But that's not where my headspace was. Like I said, I didn't want to be fighting with her family. I was like, instead, let's just try to get to the core of this and have them work things out. And then we can all film in peace. And then whatever happens, with whoever happens,
Yeah.
Like
I think what you were also doing is, back at this time, to have fights like family fighting family was very taboo, which is why Bravo loved it. But being a cast member in that in that circumstance sucks, because you're basically, you can't say, Teresa, get Joe, because if you do, it's like you're telling a sister to get a brother.
Right.
So you're going to be hated. And if you say to the brother, get Teresa, then you're going to be hated, because you're telling a brother to get a sister. So actually the cast can't win in that environment. So you did the only thing that a person who cares about the two people in real life could do, somewhat, right? Like, or cares about the family, right?
I just wanted to be here for Teresa, instead of, if she was so upset, I just didn't want her, then don't keep fighting with your family on camera. Let's try to resolve this. And then you guys could like actually have fun together, and just like, kind of like, if you can't beat them, join them situation, fake it till you make it. Because, if this is killing you, fighting with your, if the whole thing is you don't want to fight with your family on camera, let's fix that. So you're not fighting with your family on camera. So I was trying to like resolve it. So
and Jacqueline, you're going against the producers. So like, no matter what you're doing, the producers are going to take you out on this because they don't want the Gorgas and the Giudices to stop fighting.
Right. Or they like conflict and resolve, but there didn't seem to be any resolve. It was just conflict. So they want like both. They want like conflict, resolve, fight again, resolve it, more conflict, resolve it, but it was just like an ongoing feud. So it was not ending.
Well, and also Teresa wasn't faking it. So there was a real feud there. And when you have a real feud, you can't just resolve it on cue.
Right. So at that point, so I'm working hard to bring peace between them. And in doing so, I started hearing Melissa and Joe's side of the beef that I'd never heard before because, I didn't know them. But now they're my castmates on a show. I'm stuck with them. So I'm trying to, get to the bottom of it all. Like, what is your problem with her? And so they're telling me their beef. And in them telling me their beef with her, I'm seeing and hearing a side of Teresa that I didn't even know existed because in the 7 years I knew Teresa prior to the show, I never saw 1 ounce of this Teresa that Melissa was telling me about. Like Teresa and I had never gotten into one argument in 7 years, not one. So to me, Teresa was a sweetheart. She was kind and generous and funny. She was always a joy to be around. So hearing Melissa tell me all these horrible things about what Teresa would say and do to her and her brother or whatever.
Well, give me some of these examples that impacted you.
At first, it was just little things like, little snide comments Teresa would make to her about her being like a gold digger, or I don't even remember. It was just like the little things to do like with her parents, things about Joe. Like she thought that she was coming in between their relationship with her parents, like trying to put a wedge between Melissa and her parents. But, I think at the time, Teresa's parents were upset because, Teresa and Joe were like best of friends, like growing up. They were like inseparable, the best of friends, and their family was really close. So now you have Melissa coming into the picture and she's really close with her sisters and her family. And, Teresa and her parents are getting upset when like Joe wouldn't come to the holidays because he's going to go spend it with like Melissa's family. And, it's just the 3 of them, the parents and Teresa. And they're like, we're always used to spending holidays with our brother, our son. And now, he's being whisked away to Melissa's family. And I'm trying to explain like, well, that's what happens when you get married. When you get married, sometimes like the wife, she has her family and they're going to split the time, or sometime, maybe 1 year they'll have it with her family, maybe another year they'll have it with your family.
But why? So you weren't turning on Teresa over that. You were trying to be like, well, let me talk to Teresa and have her understand that you feel this way, versus you getting turned off Teresa. It was more like,
well, with that, yeah, it was more like, yeah, so it was just like little stories like that, the sprinkle cookies, how she threw them in the garbage, and she brought sprinkle cookies because they weren't good enough. And it was like, I can't even remember because it was so insignificant, the little arguments that they would have over like all these things. And I'm like, God, like doesn't sound like Teresa, because Teresa, I don't know, Teresa and I have never had this like jealousy thing with us. Like we've always been like supportive of each other. And it was never like that. So I'm hearing like little comments that she supposedly makes to Melissa, and I'm like, oh, that really doesn't sound like her, whatever. And then I would try to talk to Teresa about it. Teresa was so angry at the time of them coming on the show, and I'd never really seen her in that state. So I was seeing her act out a little and doing things I wouldn't expect from her. So Teresa would like get mad at me if I was like, I would tell, because I do it with all the newbies, like give them the ins and outs of the show, like, oh, here's different ways you can make money, or this is a way you can get, free clothes while filming, or giving them ins and outs of like the show and how it works. And Teresa would get upset because she's like, we had to learn that on our own. Why are you sharing that with them? Let them figure it out themselves, And so I was kind of like, at times I was like, is that selfish, or am I not supposed to be telling them that, and then, so I would see her act out and I didn't expect for her. And then Melissa started telling me things like Melissa had said about me, like maybe something she didn't like about me, or,
so Melissa moves on now from things that Teresa did to her to things that Teresa's doing behind your back.
Or things that she would say about me in like prior shows, or just little things. And then I started to get annoyed. But see, I noticed, so during that, I noticed Teresa pulling away from me because I was, she doesn't want to hear like their perspective. So if I tried to, play devil's advocate and say, like, listen, like, I think they're just upset because whatever, whatever. And, this is how sometimes it works. And this is how they felt, not that this was your intention, but this is how they felt when you said this or that, or, whatever. She would get mad at me, like, you're taking their side. But I was just trying to get her to see a different perspective. So she was
How does
taking
Teresa get mad? Describe that to me as a friend.
um just really annoyed, like
Does
she
she
would
yell? Does she cut you off? Does she like,
oh,
what's that like?
well she would just like get really frustrated, and I could tell she was displeased with me, like
Like how? She didn't call you? She's told you to fuck off? How?
no, she didn't do that. She just pulled away. Like she stopped talking to me as much. Like we used to talk every day for hours and hours and hours and hours. And she would get mad if I would try to show their perspective on something, or if I was trying to get to the bottom of something, she would get upset with me, So
Which equates to I don't call you or text
I
you
don't,
as much.
yeah, I
Or
just, you're not my friend because you're not seeing what I'm seeing. And you're not, if I don't like her, it was kind of that feeling like, I don't like her, you shouldn't like her either. And why are you being nice to them? Because, and for me, it was like I was being nice to them because now we're casted on a show together. But prior to the show, I didn't give her the time of day. But because now we're on a show and they're filming in my face, it's like, I'm not going to fight with these people and make my life miserable
did the
now.
producers ask you to film with Melissa?
Yeah, of course. They set up the scene. You know how it works. Like they say
Well, the
like,
fans don't, so tell them.
oh, so yeah, of course, producers set up like who films with who, when and where. So, they'll make scenes with them. They'll say you and Melissa are going to meet for lunch at this place, or you're going to have this one at your house and you guys are going to talk, it's sort of set up prior where who you're going to film with and where.
So
Just
you're becoming friends with Melissa because you kind of have to, because you're obviously being forced to film with her in certain moments. Like,
right. I'm being, and then she was nice to me and
okay.
I enjoyed her. I thought she was fun and she kept it light. She complained a lot about things Teresa would do. And I was like, all right. So I would talk to Teresa, like, this is how she took it. Maybe talk to her about this or that. And then Teresa would get upset with me because I think she thought I was taking Melissa's side, but I was really trying to get both to see each other's point of
Viewpoint.
view.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what I do. I'm a very fair person and I overanalyze every situation and I always try to get to the bottom of something. And not everybody is that deep. And I'm like, the way I go, I dig deep and I'm like, what is this coming from really? Like what I think a lot of it came from Melissa taking the sister-in-law Teresa wanted kind of away from her, and then also taking Joe away from the family because Teresa felt like that's Melissa's job to make sure that her brother spends time with his family, with his sister, to make sure that he's there for the holidays. And instead, she's like taking up all his time and she's bringing him over to her family.
Yeah, I
You
get
know,
it.
so it was hard for them.
What happens now with Melissa? So Melissa, this escalates now.
Right. It escalates, it gets more. Now Teresa's pulling away. I could feel her distancing herself from me, and that upset me because I knew my intentions were good for her and that I loved her. I just wanted her to see maybe another perspective and, kind of get to the bottom of it. So when I say Melissa manipulated me in the beginning, I mean, later, she manipulated me more, but when I say Melissa manipulated me, I meant that by Melissa sharing all these things to me about Teresa, it persuaded me to look at Teresa differently. And that's why I consider it a manipulation, because after everything I know now, I believe Melissa's intent was to put a wedge between us, and I allowed that to happen. Like, I had a choice. I could, be like, fuck off, but I allowed her to get in my head, and I allowed myself to listen to too much, or maybe I should have
Well,
stood.
no, I mean, that's kind of bullshit because to be honest, the Gorgas should have not made themselves a team, and Teresa shouldn't have made herself a team and then put you in the middle like you got to join one of the teams, right? Teresa didn't bring you on the show. You brought her on the show.
Right.
So
Well,
what the hell are you bending down to her for? Just saying. I mean, you go on the show, you're like, you're my friend. You say your piece, what you believe is true, but you shouldn't have to join any team. And actually asking you to join a team guarantees really your demise on the show, because then the producers have to use you in a really fucked up way, which
yeah,
kind of
I was trying to avoid the drama on myself from fighting with them because I knew she didn't want to fight with them. So I think she wanted me to fight with them and call them out. And I really didn't want to go there because
she wanted
it
to
was
make you her soldier, which is what she does all the time. That's her
well,
thing.
I think
But
she just
both of them.
I think she expected loyalty from a friend to like, hey, have my back and tell them, whatever. But because I overanalyze everything, I really am a fair person. So I'll listen to both sides and then I try to get the other to see the other person's side. And I don't know if that's a fault in me or
No, it's stupid.
what,
No fucking way.
but I get how she feels. It's like, you're my friend. Like, why aren't you like, you see what they're doing to me and trying to hurt my family, go after them, like do something.
You would have been screwed if you did and screwed if you didn't.
Right,
There
because
was
it's
no
her
winning in
family.
that situation. None.
The family situation. There wasn't any winning for it. So I was just trying to keep away from fighting with the cast because, like I said, I had a lot going on at home with my son and I just didn't need the extra crap. So, but the
Yeah.
more I pulled away from Teresa, the
But then
closer.
why did she say she hated you? Tell that story.
So the more Teresa pulled away, the closer I got to Melissa. And it sort of just happened naturally because we were filming together. And so this is when Teresa and I started having problems. Like I said, 7 years, not one issue between us. It was all fun, laughter, love, hours every day, all's well. Melissa's not a part of her life. Now Melissa enters. I'm hearing how Teresa is. I'm like, wow, that's not the Teresa I know. Now I'm seeing her like, is she really like that? Oh my God. And then I'm seeing her angry. So she's doing little things that seem like, oh, okay, that's not that nice. Or, she was just really frustrated. So now I'm like, okay. And then I'm hearing she's saying stuff, little comments about me. And then I'm feeling her pull away. So now I'm getting mad at her for getting mad at me. And now we're starting to drift apart now. I think at that time, she just wouldn't look at my perspective on why I was handling things the way I was. And we started fighting if I explained another perspective to her, and she took it like I was against her. But I truly felt like I was trying to help her. But our fights just intensified. Like I really was like, let's get to the bottom of this. I mean, you see the fights on the show, they were all over all kinds of stuff. At that point in time, Teresa did this thing where she would sell a bunch of articles, and she had said, I put out articles and then I talk about the show and then they boost my, book or whatever it was she was selling at the time she was promoting. I was all about that for her. It's like, do it. If you're making money, do it. Like I did one article with her where I got paid and it was the birth of Nicholas and the birth of Adriana. We were supposed to be on the cover of In Touch, but then something happened with Princess Diana or some kind of royal drama ended up being on the cover, and we were like the feature story inside. And that was the only article that I did that I got paid with her. She got me that gig with her. But the whole thing was, at the time, she was putting out articles and making money, totally fine. But in some of those articles, things were being said about us in the cast. So it was pissing off my sister-in-law. Things were being said about Melissa and Kathy. And then there was one article that came out that said we were bullying her because she was poor, which was so far from the truth because, first of all, I never even saw her being poor. Like, I didn't even know that was a thing. Like, I never saw that. So I'm like, this is bullshit. Like, why are we being brought into this? So everybody was getting like upset. But fast forward, what we found out was and we were also getting mad at her because the blogs would come out when the show was airing and they'd be kind of bashing the cast. Come to find out, Teresa wasn't writing her blogs. She had a writer, and the person that was doing a lot of these articles and making statements for Teresa was someone else. So I don't even know if she truly knew what was being said about us. And I think that's why she was denying it so adamantly, because it really wasn't her. It was her handlers. So looking back, but at the time, it just seemed like, oh my God, why is she, you can put articles out about yourself, but don't bring us into it and say we're bullying you and like all this stuff that's not even true. Like, what are you saying? And
yeah, so it was basically like kind of what's going on with the Gabriella situation now, but back then.
yeah, it was
Using
like
the tabloids and a publicist or Jim again.
so I don't think that she really was doing, because like I know in the reunions, if you look back and we're like, oh, you said this and this, and she's like, no, I didn't. But like, or like in her book when she made the comment about Caroline, it wasn't her, it was the girl writing the book. So I don't even think she knew what was actually being said. Maybe it wasn't her, you know? So, but we, at the time, it just was like, why are you doing this? Like, talk about yourself. And then one time she had made a joke like, ooh, I should put out an article that I'm cheating on Joe, even though she wasn't. But she thought that would be like a good, you know, kind of a
yeah, that sounds like something Kim Zolciak would do. Go ahead.
It was just sort of like a funny, you know, and I was like, why would you do that? Don't do that, you know, whatever. So when the articles started coming out about her being in all these like financial things, like her and I hadn't talked about that at all. Like she did not tell me I'm having financial issues, don't talk about it. I have this, you know, don't talk. That never happened. It was just like things were coming up in the press a lot. And the way the show works, as you know, is if there's a lot of gossip on blogs and in the major media and things like that, the cast has to talk about whatever's out there in the media. It becomes part of the show. And so we all thought it was like fake anyway. Like I really didn't know if it was real or not, because I've been hearing like from Melissa and Joe little things about her personal situation.
With
But
Giudice.
right, like little things, you know, about him through Joe and Melissa, but I hadn't heard anything from Teresa. So I really didn't know, but I was a little concerned, but I didn't know. Okay, so there was some article that was circulating that it was about the possibility of Teresa and Joe going to jail. And I had not heard anything like that from Teresa. I didn't even know if it was true or not, but it was like, you know, the producers are like, this is circulating. Everyone on the cast is talking about this. They told me that Teresa and Joe filmed with their attorney talking about this, which when the show aired, it did show Teresa and Joe talking about this with their attorney. So I was told everyone was talking about it. So they told me, you know, Teresa was coming over to talk to me and that I need to ask her what's going on because I'm reading this or that or whatever. And I hadn't even seen the article. Like I hadn't seen it. I know people were talking about it, but I hadn't seen it like in person. The producers brought the article and put it in front of me. Okay. So now I'm seeing this article for the first time and I'm like, holy shit, what the hell is this? Like, oh my God. So Teresa comes over.
Hunger Games begins.
Happy Hunger Games, and may the odds be ever in your favor.
So now, you know, I'm being told Teresa filmed with her attorney talking about this. I'm like, this is true? Like, what? So I'm kind of like, I cannot believe this. Like, there's just what the hell? Because there was another incident before that with something in the press that I thought was going on. And when I asked her about it, she denied it. And then it was just like, it's sensitive to bring things up like that to Teresa, you know? Yeah. So in my head, I was like, okay, I'm going to ask her about it. She's going to deny it. She's going to say, you know, look, I put out articles to sell my stuff. Like, I honestly didn't know what articles were true or not true anymore, or if it was just her putting stuff out there to sell her books, or like there was no rhyme or like there was no way of knowing what was true or what's not true anymore, because you know that was just the game of staying in the press, staying in the media, you know, you put out things, you promote your stuff, and it was just, you know, that media game. So I didn't know really how sensitive this was. And so, but at the same time, I'm hearing little things and I'm like, oh my God, is this true or not? So I had to confront her about it on camera.
So you confronted her on camera and you got a lot of slack because you were supposedly, from the fans' perspective, a bad friend, because why were you bringing up Teresa going to jail? And then Teresa seems to retaliate with like, you went bankrupt and something you did was criminal or something.
That was seventh season. That's
Is that a different one?
That argument, see, that was season 4. That fight with Teresa and I on the deck was season 4. Season 7 was the fight in my kitchen. That's 3 seasons later.
Oh God, same fight almost.
Yeah, we basically brought that up. Mm-hmm.
All right, sorry. So you're forced to show the article to Teresa. The fans think, why is Jacqueline doing this to Teresa? They don't know a producer's making you do it to create drama.
Yeah, and it wasn't even to create drama. It was more like, oh my God, this article is out there, like a million other articles that are out there. Like, what's true, what's not true, to set the record straight. That was basically my head was set the record straight. Is this true, not true, whatever, whatever, like.
Yeah, but the producers they don't want to do that. They want to have a reaction from Teresa. That's why they're doing it. They don't want to get to the truth. They don't give a shit.
I was told Teresa already filmed talking about the article.
Yeah.
And everyone on the cast was talking about the article. So I just thought I was just adding to what the
You didn't
rest
think
of
it was
the
a
cast.
big deal.
Yeah, so I was getting to, and they did not tell me Caroline was going to show up. They thought that I ambushed Teresa with Caroline. I didn't know Caroline was coming. What happened was that scene on the deck with Teresa was 5 hours. People saw an edited down version of that.
For the full scoop, join the Dishing Drama Dana Patreon. The link is in this audio description. It's only $6 a month and you'll get the best information and tea about the things you care about and even the things you don't know you care about. What are you waiting for?